Good evening. The council will come to order at this time. Would everyone please rise? We'll be led in prayer by Alderman Neuendorf.
Almighty God, we ask you for your blessing upon the members of this council as we assemble here at Kelly Middle School to conduct the ongoing business of our city. With your guidance, we will strive to ensure that our decisions are for the common good, and your inspiration will instill respect, compassion, and thoughtfulness in your deliberations. Give us the strength and the wisdom to lead by example as the people's representatives, and the peace and harmony will mark all our proceedings and keep us faithful to the trust placed in us by the citizens of your community. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Alderman Berto, please, the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would ask for a motion to accept the minutes of July 5th, 18th, and 25th, 2022. Alderwoman Gould, second by Alderwoman Berto. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. At this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to suspend our rules. It is our intent to add a Resolution 3 to our agenda, so at this time I'd ask for that motion for suspension. Alderman Wilson, seconded by Alderman Singh. Roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion for suspension passes 7-0. At this time, I'd ask for a motion to add Resolution 3 relative to a program such as Rose City Water Wars at Jenkins Park. Motion by Alderman Singh, second by Alderman Gould. Is there discussion? Betsy, could you please read it for the public record and their edification?
Sure. Whereas the City of Norwich supports programs such as Rose City Water Wars to be held on Saturday, August 6, 2022, from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Jenkins Park on Mechanic Street, right in the City of Norwich. And whereas the City of Norwich would like to acknowledge the following sponsors: the Norwich Police Department, the Norwich Fire Department, the Norwich Youth and Family Services Department, the Norwich Rec Department, Night Flight Basketball League, Bloom Into Greatness, Norwich Youth Football League, Norwich Bully Busters, the DHW, and the United Way Gemma Moran Food Bank. And whereas the City of Norwich wishes to extend their gratefulness to all organizations that are working to recreate this opportunity. And now therefore be resolved by the Council of the City of Norwich that the celebration known as Rose City Water Wars 2022 will be held Saturday, August 6, 2022, from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Jenkins Park on Mechanic Street, is recognized and supported and considered an opportunity for healthy and clean fun for all residents to participate in. Sponsored by Mayor Peter Albert Nystrom and President Pro Tem Joseph DeLucia.
Thank you, Betsy. Entertain a motion, please. Again, who's the first and second?
Singh and then Gould.
Okay, thank you. The motion before us is to add this to the agenda. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
The motion passes 7-0. Again, it'll be item Resolution 3 on our agenda at this time.
Public hearing number 1, an ordinance appropriating $500,000 for the cost of planning a lead copper service line replacement program in the City of Norwich, and authorizing the issuance of $500,000 revenue bonds of the city secured solely by water revenue to meet said appropriation, and authorizing the city and the Department of the Public Utilities to enter into grant and loan agreements and a joint resolution with the state of Connecticut with respect hereto.
At this time, I would declare the hearing open, and I would ask also that our city clerk read the correspondence from the Commission on the City Plan.
July 20th, 2022, to the Honorable Mayor and Alderpersons of the Council of the City of Norwich, regarding an ordinance appropriating $500,000 for the cost of planning a lead copper service line replacement program in the City of Norwich, authorizing the issuance of $500,000 revenue bonds of the city secured solely by water revenue to meet said appropriation, and authorizing the city and Department of Public Utilities to enter into grant and loan agreements and a joint resolution with the state of Connecticut with respect hereto. The Commission on the City Plan at its July 19, 2022 hybrid regular meeting reviewed and discussed the above referenced referral. Seated were Frank Manfredi, Les King, Kathy Wazika, Ella Miles, and Michael Lehan. After careful consideration, the Commission voted unanimously to forward a favorable recommendation. Reason under the Support Community Structure section of the Managed Utility Infrastructure chapter of the current adopted POCD Strategies Number 1 specifically states that the city provide adequate water infrastructure to meet the community needs and support desired growth patterns. Frank Manfredi, Chairman.
Thank you, Betsy. At this time, I would entertain anyone who would like to speak in favor of this ordinance. Please come to the microphone, speak clearly into the microphone. Please state your name and address as you approach. Each person has 3 minutes. Does anyone like to speak in favor of ordinance number 1 at this time? Anyone like to speak in favor of ordinance number 1 at this time? Please.
Good evening. Chris LaRose, General Manager, Norwich Public Utilities. This bond ordinance is a critical requirement for the Department of Health to ensure that we assess all of our water system to make sure we know all lines that are lead-based lines in the public water. We have already gone through, done a quality-based selection process. We have chosen a consultant to work through this process with us. That consultant is Arcadis. And this will allow us to find out where the lead lines are in our system and create a plan to, construction plan to replace all of the lead copper in our system. So this is the first phase. This is $500,000 for planning. And the second phase will be the construction phase, which could be upwards of $5 million. We're expecting to get at least a 50% grant for this. It's 50% plus a distressed community additional grant. We haven't been told what that is yet, but this will be 50% grant from the Department of Health. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor of ordinance number 1 at this time? And anyone else like to speak in favor of ordinance number 1 at this time? Third call. Anyone like to speak in favor of ordinance number 1 at this time? Then at this time, I would ask if there's anyone here in opposition to this ordinance at this time. Again, please state your name and address. Anyone like to speak in opposition to ordinance? Please, sir.
Guy Palazzo, 6 Harvard Terrace.
Please at the microphone. Thank you.
Guy Palazzo, 6 Harvard Terrace, naturally Norwich. I'm not necessarily against it, but can somebody answer the question, how much lead do we have that we're concerned with percentage-wise? Can I ask a question? I would say it's for the public utilities, gentlemen.
My expectation is that because this is create the master plan, during that discovery, we'll determine what that percentage is.
That's a big question. Is copper, I mean, many of us still have copper. There's a lot of copper. It's not all PEX tubing. Is copper, has it been found to be terribly unhealthy? Will that come out in the study too, or has it already? You can answer it if the mayor would let you.
Normally, we can call him back to answer that question once we
I'm
have
fine.
the ordinance on the floor for
And
voting.
as I said,
And we
I'm
will
not
do that.
necessarily against it, Mr.
I get
Mayor.
it. I get it. Appreciate your input, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, is there anyone here in opposition to ordinance number 1 at this time?
Rodney Boyd, 62 Roosevelt Avenue. This is actually the first I've heard of this particular ordinance, but I own several houses that had lead services in them when I bought them. I don't have lead service anymore. But I realize that lead is a toxic substance. I don't think copper is. And I don't know why copper is referenced in this particular item. So I'm not against us taking out the lead, but the copper has got to stay. We don't need to replace copper all over the city. I'm very familiar with lead abatement and copper. I've been on the lead abatement committee for the past 35 years. I was in the Navy. I've been in an electric boat. I know about lead. So copper is used throughout the world, not necessarily just the United States. It's all over the world. Most of our mains in the city are copper and cast iron. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And anyone else like to speak in opposition to ordinance number 1 at this time? Anyone else in opposition to ordinance number 1 at this time? Third call. Anyone like to speak in opposition to ordinance number 1 at this time? Seeing no other speakers, I'd like to declare this public hearing, ordinance number 1, to be closed. Thank you all.
Number 2, an ordinance appropriating $3,350,000 for the planning, design, and construction to replace a water main along Caribou Drive and Lawler Lane in the city, and authorizing the issuance of $3,350,000 revenue bonds of the city secured solely by water revenue to meet said appropriation, and authorizing the city and the Department of Public Utilities to enter into grant and loan agreements and a joint resolution with the state of Connecticut with respect hereto.
Thank you. I declare this hearing on ordinance number 2 to be open. And again, I would ask our city clerk to read the correspondence from the Commission on the City Plan.
July 20th, 2022, the Honorable Mayor and alderpersons of the Council of the City of Norwich, an ordinance appropriating $3,350,000 for the planning, design, and construction to replace water main along Caribou Drive and Lawler Lane in the city, authorizing the issuance of $3,350,000 revenue bonds of the city secured solely by water revenue to meet said appropriation, and authorizing the city and Department of Public Utilities to enter into grant and loan agreements with a joint resolution with the state of Connecticut with respect hereto. The Commission on the City Plan at their July 19, 2022 hybrid regular meeting reviewed and discussed the above reference referral. Seated were Frank Manfredi, Les King, Kathy Wazika, Ella Miles, and Michael Lahan. After careful consideration, the Commission voted unanimously to forward a favorable recommendation. The reason under the Support Community Structure section of the Managed Utility Infrastructure chapter of the current adopted POCD Strategy 1 specifically states that the city provide for adequate water infrastructure to meet the community needs and support desired growth and patterns. Frank Manfredi, Chairman.
Thank you. At this time, I would invite anyone wishing to speak in favor of ordinance number 2 at this time. Again, for the record, please state your name and address, and you would have 3 minutes. Please speak clearly into the microphone provided. Would anyone like to speak in favor of ordinance number 2? Again, would anyone like to speak in favor of ordinance number 2? Sir.
Chris LaRose, General Manager, Norwich Public Utilities. This project will replace approximately 3,400 linear feet of 8-inch asbestos cement pipe with either 8-inch ductile iron or high-density polyethylene pipe. This is a pipe that is prone to leakage and difficult to work with, and it's in the best interest of replacing this pipe for future longevity of the reliability of the water system up there.
Thank you. So anyone else like to speak in favor of ordinance number 2 at this time? And anyone like to speak in favor of ordinance number 2 at this time? Anyone like to speak in favor of ordinance number 2 at this time? Seeing no one else, then I would ask anyone like to speak in opposition to ordinance number 2 at this time. Again, anyone like to speak in opposition to ordinance number 2 at this time? Third call, anyone like to speak in opposition to ordinance number 2 at this time? Seeing no other speakers, I then declare public hearing on ordinance number 2 to be closed. Thank you.
Number 3, an ordinance appropriating $385 million for the City of Norwich School Construction Program, including property acquisition, design engineering, environmental asset and remediation, construction, installation, repair, renovations, and addition of various school facilities, and authorizing the issuance of $385 million bonds of the city to meet said appropriation, and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowing for such purpose.
Thank you. I declare this a public hearing to be open, and I would ask our city clerk again to read this Commission on City Plan statement.
July 20th, 2022, the Honorable Mayor and Alderpersons of the Council of the City of Norwich, an ordinance appropriating $385 million for the City of Norwich School Construction Program, including property acquisition, design, engineering, environmental assessment, and the remediation, construction, installation, repair, renovations, and addition of various school facilities, and authorizing the issuance of $385 million bonds of the city to meet said appropriation, and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowing for such purpose. The Commission on the City Plan at its July 19, 2022 hybrid regular meeting reviewed and discussed the above reference referral. Seated were Frank Manfredi, Les King, Kathy Wazika, Ella Miles, and Michael Lehan. After careful consideration, the Commission voted unanimously to forward a favorable recommendation stating the following: not on the basis of the Commission on City Plan is condoning this project, but it means the POCD, which includes the following: strategy number 2, under Provide for Community Facilities section of the Promote Livability chapter of the current adopted POCD, specifically states that the city should continue to evaluate and prioritize municipal facilities issues and needs. Frank Manfredi, Chairman.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to have a public hearing on Ordinance 3. I do have a sign-up sheet. The first person listed here is Mr. John Rankowitz.
John J. Rinkwitz Jr., 23 Michelle Drive, Norwich, Connecticut. I personally think that Norwich should build 10 new schools and knock down all of the present buildings. So what if our tax rate goes up 100%? You people really don't care. What a joke. To you, the sky is the limit. It is so absurd to build 4 new schools at this present time when we're in a bad recession. You should use what you have now and make the repairs that should have been done over these past few years. Of course, the architects don't care. I'm just curious to find out the profit that they're making. Naturally, they're going to be in favor of building 4 new schools. We should have a regular homeowner make the plans. They would have more common sense on how to budget money.
Thank you, sir. Just for the record, we normally begin with those in favor of the ordinance, but I would seek to state that your comment is reserved for in opposition to the ordinance so that it's correctly recorded. Yeah, okay, thank you. The next person signed up, so if we have someone who is speaking in favor of the ordinance at this time, please.
Roberta Payro, 246A Yantic Street. About a month ago, I was part of a small group that was given a tour of the fairly new El Grasso High School in Groton. And I was like, wow, if I was a young person, I would want to come to this school. It's state-of-the-art, and just from what I've heard and what I have read, I can't say I've been in our schools, it sounds like they are currently totally inadequate, except with the exception of this one, to meet today's needs and to meet the needs of the children, of the educators, the other staff that work there. So I am in favor of not spending any more money and moving forward and investing in the new schools and the needed renovations to the other 2.
Thank you. Again, someone here like to speak, and we're going to go back and forth. In opposition to this ordinance at this time? This is a slot for someone in opposition at this time. The dilemma is when people signed up, they didn't state their position pro or against. And yet I'm trying to follow the sign-up list. Mr. Palazzo, please.
Guy Palazzo, 6 Harvard Terrace. I'd like to start by asking, have you ever heard the saying, a house is not a home? We all have. My parents, they knew that saying very well. They made do with what they had. What they did provide, especially in today's times, it's really needed, but many parents are both out working. Peter had some great, Mr. Mayor, you had some great comments about prioritizing. I read through them, and I think your priorities are right in line. But there's one priority I think we're all missing, and maybe we know it, but we can't say it. The arts. How valuable is the arts nowadays, music and fine arts? When your child is out in a car and potentially could be involved in road rage and has the frustrations of today's life and has nowhere to turn to, they have their instrument, they have their arts. It's really a shelter. It's so important. A house is not a home. You can build an ultra-modern El Grasso school, but if they're teaching the wrong things, expand your arts program. That is a priority. Your children, if you're not home because you have to work and pay those taxes, wouldn't it be nice to be, Ma, look what I drew today. I love art. Look what I played on the guitar. I love this. We do this for the love, for the audience, for the self-satisfaction. Even a child knows they only have X amount of heartbeats. Nobody wants to spend them uselessly. They instinctively know every moment counts on this earth. And that shelter, that's the home. It's not the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Betancourt.
Evening, Mark Betancourt, 129 Merchants Ave, and I am the chairman of the school building committee. Obviously I'm here to speak in favor of the ordinance as it stands. I think the biggest thing we have to consider is if we don't do it, it's going to cost us more money down the road. So number one, that's a big thing. There's another ordinance on the agenda for first reading. I think it'd be remiss if I didn't at least make my comments in consideration of that. The problem here is that if we don't do teachers, we wind up with a substandard middle school while the others are all current. I thought about using some different language with this, but I thought maybe it would raise some eyebrows. So with that said, I think one of the biggest goals the committee had was parity, so that our students all have equal opportunities in the school system. That would leave teachers with grossly unequal facilities. And that was one of the things we considered at the committee level, I think, and that how we were going to approach this project. And doing it in phases with multiple referenda, I think would be a little difficult. So I think this particular referendum is the best approach. But with all due respect, I think certainly I recognize that there's issues, certainly in the cost and other priorities. But if we fail to do this, I think we wind up shortchanging certainly half of our students in the K through 8 system that are going to wind up going to teachers. So that's, I think, is a real problem. You can say that, okay, we're going to address this later. Yeah, that's certainly no guarantee there. And it won't absolve us from the responsibility of maintaining that building going forward. So those costs will be there in place, and they will be higher than what would cost us to repair or replace the building under a new building program or a renovate as new program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Linda Theodora? Pardon me? That's okay.
My name is Linda Theodoro, 37 Taftville Ockham Road, Norwich, Connecticut. I agree that the only sane option is to build new schools. I do understand that it would cost the taxpayers more in the long run than to try keeping and patching the old decrepit schools. I also believe that this should all be done as one project, working on all the schools from the beginning. We don't want to leave a school that is substandard and might have some catastrophic event or end up costing more. I also worry that if anything is left for the future and not started on right now, inflation would make the project cost more than originally estimated. And I also worry that it might not actually happen for some unknown reason. So therefore, I believe we should approach this as one whole project and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Joseph Tuber?
Good evening. Joseph Juber, 606 Riverview Lane, and I am currently the head custodian of teachers. And I'd like to invite all of you to come to this school right now and look at the building. Look at the ceilings, the roof, the walls, the stairs, every aspect of it, and to get that fixed right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John Paprocki.
John Paprocki, 19 October Avenue, Norwich, Connecticut. It's my opinion that any dime that you put towards education of kids is very well spent. And that's what kids need more than anything else, is a good foundation, when they walk into a school, they feel good about themselves. I think that, I was born and raised in Norwich myself. I went to this school. When it was almost brand new, it made you feel a lot better than the old schools I went to when I was in grammar school. And I've been a carpenter for 40 years. I see what happens. Nothing lasts forever. You can't just fix, patch. You got to replace, go over new. You can't just say, hey, let's try to save some money. But you're not saving the money in the long run. You're just going to keep on putting money. It's like trying to put money into an old car. You just keep on, and sooner or later you got to say, it's time to get rid of that car. And I just want to say one thing, that I'm a union carpenter. I lived in Norwich all my life. I've never even worked in Norwich. You got big projects coming up. Put some of the kids in Norwich to work that are in the union, the apprentices. There's a lot of people in Norwich that have never worked in Norwich because of different reasons, because of the funding, the way things go. But try to do what you can for the people in Norwich. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Robert Aldi, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. My name is Robert Aldi. I live at 231 Scotland Road. I'm also the chair of the Norwich Board of Education, and I'm here to speak in favor of ordinance number 3 for the school building construction and committee. Currently, the Norwich Public School Systems consists of 7 elementary schools, 1 pre-kindergarten, 2 middle, and various buildings housing the central office, administration, and staff. Except for the Kelly Middle School, which was completely renovated 10 years ago, all of our schools are over 50 years old, up to 130 years old. Physically, the school building systems are failing at an alarming rate. They need new roofs, boilers, windows, doors, and mechanical systems. A recent repaving project at the Stanton School found 2 culverts in a parking lot about to collapse. Our schools don't address students, staff comfort, and or their needs. Poor room layouts and lack of conference and office space would not be solved by renovation alone. There is inadequate air conditioning, no air handling and purification systems, a lack of technology in the buildings to support our current wired world. They do not meet standards for school safety or compliance with the American with Disabilities Act. They are woefully inadequate just from a construction viewpoint to meet the current education needs and standards required in buildings' modern society. A mechanical or systems failure can have wide-ranging implications. The reason why this council is meeting in this auditorium over the next few months is due to an electrical switch failure in 1 elevator in the City Hall. Think of the chaos that would happen if we had to shut down 1 school or even a portion of 1 school due to a system failure. That is the superintendent's constant nightmare. The options before you tonight are, number 1, to renovate our school buildings, or 2, proceed with an ambiguous program of building new schools and a complete upgrade of other buildings. The build new option would cost in the range of $385 million. But with the state reimbursements, the burden on taxpayers would be reduced to about $150 million. If we don't build new, then the existing buildings will have to be renovated at a cost to exceed $200 $125 million with no reimbursements. This is not discretionary spending, ladies and gentlemen. This money must be spent or we will have no schools. So it will cost the taxpayers $75 million more to keep what we have, to have a modern set of school buildings. The choice seems fairly clear and fairly obvious. We need upgraded facilities. We have no choice but to make improvements. The building will fail without action. We need the buildings to educate our students. We have no space to put the students otherwise. Renovation would not improve the current layout of the existing buildings, only prevent roofs from leaking and ensuring adequate heat in the winter. I urge the City Council to enact a full school facilities project as proposed in Ordinance Number 3. Half measures are not needed. We need action now. As a parent of 4 public school students, one of which is in NFA, the other 3 at Moriarty, our teachers, our students, our staff, our kids, and the educational future of Norwich Public Schools for many years in the future depend on your action tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Susan Blinderman, please. Is Susan still with us? Susan Blinderman? Okay. Rodney Bowie, then.
Rodney Bowie, 62 Roosevelt Avenue. I thank him for his description of the problems with the city schools. But I think the cost of the renovations and the replacement of schools is quite, for one, it's quite unexpected. And the other thing is that I'm not sure that it's going to be paid by the state. We talk about building schools and making them more attuned to the modern life, but I was raised in a country where we all went to school in one room. And we received an education fit to be taught. Now, my cousins and I received an excellent education. Some received masters, doctorates. Stephen King even learned to write books. Wasn't done in a modern building, not even for that day. It was a one-room school. But we hear these dire predictions of failure of our present schools. And I'm not of that same opinion. And I think $185 million is a lot of money to set upon the city of Norwich. I probably will never pay 1/10 of that particular money, but my children will. And the state of Connecticut is not set up so that they're not going to pay taxes to you. You will pay for this school, not me, but you. You and all the rest of these people. It is expensive. And I do want the schools to be very adequate. I just want an education for these kids. If they don't get an education, quite frankly, they don't have a future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brian Kobolars?
Brian Kovalar, 16 Hobart Avenue, Norwich. Jotted a couple notes as I was listening. I don't have a particular stake in this. I don't have any children, never have. I'll be gone by the time any of this money will end up being a burden on the taxpayers, but it's a burden worth investing in my own opinion. Some points, though, that I would bring up. I don't know, because I haven't spoken with Mark or the other people on the committee, if this construction is going to include more of a state-of-the-art security system. Will they be able to do a remote lockdown? Will they be able to detect if there's an outer door that's open from a central office area? Are these buildings being built in such a way that they can expand or contract based on what the student population demographics are going to be? Insofar as education being important, absolutely. But one thing that needs to be looked at very, very carefully, you need to have a parallel effort when it comes to economic development in this community. It makes little sense to provide a high-class education if you don't have the jobs here to keep them here. You're not educating the students to export them. There are organizations in the city that award people only if they leave the city. We need to begin turning this around, and I've mentioned that before. Two other small points. Why can't we use some of the ARPA money, at least in the initial development of this? It falls under public safety, coming out of the pandemic. It falls under infrastructure. Makes sense to me. Why not, instead of the spurious projects where people are doing the money grab? This is an investment in the future. And finally, I'm not sure if I misread it or if it got corrected, but when I read through the thing online tonight, I think that your last ordinance, when you end up asking for this to be passed, has a different dollar figure assigned to it than what's in the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Robert Bell.
Good evening. Robert Bell, 122 Broadway. I am speaking in favor of this ordinance, and I'm personally very excited about it. You know, I attended some of these the meetings and where you were discussing the cost, the benefits, and the alternative of just renovating the schools. And I really want to take 1 second to thank Mark Betancourt and the school committee for all the time that they committed to this, to actually do the data. And, you know, my neighbors who are in opposition to this, you know, your arguments are extremely valid. This is a very high dollar price tag that's on this. But, you know, attending these meetings and seeing the data, the price tag is even higher if we just renovate these schools. Our boilers are at the end of their life. We've already do not have a place to put our children if the boilers break down midwinter. They're going to have to figure something out. And that's a situation that we don't want to put our children in. And our schools are falling apart, and this is a very fantastic opportunity that Norwich has to build an anchor for our children to go to school in a modern building, to teach them modern subjects. You know, and we can increase in these things. And, you know, with the new Greenville school that's being built, there are certain cost savings that we should be able to see with the decrease in busing some of the kids from all over the school. The jobs we're going to bring to the area, there's going to be an increased tax base there, which we can see some cost savings there as well. And just the long-term benefit here, it's wonderful, and I'm very excited about it. Let's move forward, make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to speak at this time? Sir, please join us. Again, please state your name and your address for the public record.
Larry Lazat, 1 Watercress Ave, here in Norwich. As a bit of background, as a result of an injury, I lost my job recently, and when switching from workers' comp to unemployment, I haven't been paid in the past 9 weeks, so I have zero income right now. So my being here, I'd like everyone to know that this is how important this issue is to me, that I use those resources to come here. Someone used the word foundation earlier, and there's nothing more foundational than education. Today, most of our kids are in families where both parents have at least one job. Probably somebody has two or a side hustle, and they get most of their interactions with the school system. I went to this school. The chairs are much more comfortable now. Thank you for that. So I'm very much in support of this, but probably not for the reasons most people have expressed. I'm in favor of this because of what happened in Uvalde, Texas, when 400 American heroes who typically go out wearing white cowboy hats completely failed the children in that school. So I have no optimism that people in my generation or my parents' generation are ever going to do anything to protect their children. So I think we need to invest in the foundation that our kids grow up in. And I don't even have children. So build the good schools and empower the teachers to educate and the counselors to guide, so that those children, when they take over your positions and the state positions and the federal positions, they pass the laws that will stop their children from being slaughtered in school chairs. Maybe that's a bit more emotional than people are ready for, but that's why I came here today and used my limited resources. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone like to speak in favor of the ordinance at this time? Please.
Oops.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Jones. I'm at 164 Gifford Street here in Norwich. I'm a proud member of the United Brotherhood of Carpenters. I belong to Local 326. Tonight I raise my voice to support the proposed $385 million school construction ordinance. I would request that both the City Council and Building Committee use every means necessary to secure this work for our town residents. Other towns like Killingly, Woodham, Manchester, New London all have found ways to require residents hire in their bid documents. It is required to have 20% resident hire and 30% county hire. A project of this magnitude will solidify the local labor workforce and improve the local economic. Let's put local trade people and local trade apprentices to work. I've also have lived here for 7 years, and I'm totally for this. I've owned my house for this past 7 years. I put a lot of money into taxes, tax of the house, property, cars, vehicles, trailers, dogs, cats, everything. And if there's one thing I could be proud of as being a resident, is that to see that my taxpayers' money would not only fund and support better schools for my two kids, but also to hopefully support union trades to come in and to do the work for Norwich. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Sheila Hayes, 382 Lower Hill Avenue. I'd like to, first of all, support the public ordinance in number 3 in the full amount that we do need to address our schools all at once for the equitable and equality that our students, our youth in this city deserve. I know you heard that term earlier. We have to put that first and foremost, that we can no longer piecemeal, do a part here, do another part there. We have to be diligent, that we have to address our educational systems, our facilities in an equitable and equal manner. I'm going to also talk about another point, that as much as I appreciate the Comptroller doing the estimated tax debt service, I think there's some information that's missing, not on what Josh prepared, but what's not in here is what is the cost. There are other costs when you consolidate from 7 elementary schools down to 4 elementary schools. There's some savings, and that's not being shown here. Our educational budget will decrease. That's not being shown to the public. There are additional savings that I think the public should be made aware of that will help us understand that it's not going to be, the Board of Education budget is not going to be what it is today. It's going to decrease because you've decreased schools and you have some savings. Another point that I'd like to make, and somebody alluded to it earlier, we know when we renovated as new Kelly Middle School, part of what we were told, the school building committee was told, and part of the push that get this school building renovated was we're trying to attract mayor and to the president pro tem and city council. You just approved last Monday asking to state to invest the community investment funds, 10 million, 8 million, probably close to $30 million to renovate buildings downtown, renovate downtown Norwich. You're looking at expanding the business park, or building the business park north. There's the, and I forget it, it's the solar seal is coming. We're bringing in new businesses. We should be attracting new residents. Where do they want to send their children to school? If we really want them to come here, we have to provide 21st century state-of-the-art school facilities. So I'm asking that you support the entire bond to renovate the elementary schools and the middle school. Number one, it's an investment for all the businesses that are going to come here, for the new people and the existing families that are here, but the new families that come in, it's a selling point. And it's about time we have equitable and equity in our school systems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Koulis. I live at 327 Broadway, Norwich. I'm the Vice Chair of the Norwich Board of Education and am a voting member of the School Facilities Building Committee. I'm speaking in favor of proposed Ordinance 3 for the school building construction. I welcome the council to Kelly Auditorium for a few months while the elevator issue gets fixed at City Hall. As you all can see, one breakdown can lead to major disruptions in normal scheduling. This is the current reality we're facing at Norwich Public Schools and live under every day. I would ask a little more time. My total presentation is probably about 8 or 9 minutes. I'm trying to aggregate time from other board members, if that would be allowed.
I would ask you to, after everyone has had a chance to speak, if you'd like to return with the remaining portion of the statement, you'd certainly be welcome to come back a second time, but try to stay within that first 3 minutes. And again, if you have further things to say at the end, join us.
Okay. All right. First, I'd like to address some basics. What is education? Education is the passing of accumulated knowledge from one generation of humans to successive generations. It's a social contract to improve the condition of the human species and benefits us all, whether or not our children have completed their education and whether or not we have even had children. It's a continuing and enduring process. We all benefit from the passing on of knowledge. It's the reason we have automobiles, jet planes, and microwave ovens. We're able to send satellites and telescopes into space to probe the secrets of our universe. It's why our lifelines have been extended by the use of medicines and new treatments for illnesses. It's why we can reach into our pockets, punch a few numbers onto a device, and communicate with another person on the other side of the planet in a few seconds. Education is vital to us all as a species and to each of us individually. So why do we need schools? For thousands of years, we've learned that it's much more efficient to have students gather together with a teacher rather than have that teacher repeat his lessons to each student individually. Schools are a necessary part of education. Our recent experiences with remote electronic means of education during the COVID shutdown has shown that in-person education at schools is still the best method for teaching and learning. Since our earliest group settlements, schools have been among the first public buildings to be built in a community. As populations grow and new methods of instruction are employed, new and better schools are constructed, demolished, and rebuilt to best serve the needs of students. It's why we no longer use the one-room schoolhouse on the Norwich Town Green to educate our current 3,200 students. School planning and construction is a constantly evolving and active process. I'll return.
Thank you. Look forward to the remaining portion. Please.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Turner, and I live at 281 Norwich Avenue. I come tonight to speak in favor of this ordinance. I grew up in Norwich, not my entire life, but I was always connected through my grandparents who lived on 61 Flyers Drive. While living with them, I had the benefit of going to Mohegan Community College daycare. I don't know if anybody remembers that, because when I talk to some of these young kids, they look at me like I have 6 heads. I went to John Moriarty, and then from there I was uprooted to Baltic, from Baltic to Lisbon, and Lisbon is where I had the opportunity to see what an updated school looked like, what a small classroom size looked like, what a science lab that was up to date looked like, what a math lab that was up to date looked like. And then in 8th grade, from there I was uprooted to Bloomfield, to my aunt's house, to go to Carmen Arrace Middle School, where in 8th grade they were learning algebra that I had learned in 5th grade. Let's talk about a disparity, and let's talk about the feeling that the white kid from Lisbon, Connecticut, had to teach a majority of the black and Hispanic students in that rundown school algebra. This is some of the same feelings that a lot of these kids in Norwich share with me. They share with other mentors in Norwich, because just like how we tell people, when you look nice, you feel nice. When you smell nice, you feel nice. When you eat nice, you feel nice. Well, that's the same for our school system. You know, we come into Kelly, this is pretty nice. My son was one of the experiment kids for the 6th grade academy. I was floored when I went into that building. And we actually have taxpayers sitting in this room worried about a cost when it's our kids that matter ultimately. You know, I don't have to be here tonight. My young son that was an experiment is now in his almost 3rd year of high school. But I come because I love kids. I work with kids regularly throughout numerous community organizations. They want better schools, they want better education. And to the gentleman who spoke on the one-room schoolhouse, I'm sorry, sir, no disrespect, but we do not live in that time anymore. Schools cannot house a one room with all of the first, second, or third graders that we have in this city. Granted, the numbers are dwindling, but guess what? We build new schools, we bring back business to Norwich, and the people will come. Thank you for my time. And yours.
Thank you. And I'd like to speak at this time on ordinance number 3.
Good evening. Ned Raimondi, 361 Palmer Street Extension. Now, I'm the third generation in my house, so I don't think I'm going anywhere. And you have to drive into Preston to actually get to our property. You know, Preston's mill rate is 27.88 mils. Anyway, you know, I went to Bishop School growing up. That was like a mile to get to school, mile home. But, you know, so I seen the addition they put on there like 20 years ago. You know, the cafeteria and auditorium, and, you know, even with the addition, it's still in, you know, what's the building used for now? You know, they still have old classrooms and stuff, and now it's used for some alternate purpose. So my brother was a year ahead of me. He was the first graduating class from Teachers Memorial when they built that school. So, you know, I had a decent school in junior high. And I'm just wondering, you know, it seems like a shift kind of away from public school to charter schools. So I'm just hoping, you know, they took that into account when they figure how many students we'll have. You know, I'm kind of in favor of this resolution. We just like to see something. You know, I've been a union carpenter 37 years. You know, I graduated from Norwich Tech 1981. I worked on Norwich Tech next door when they built it in 2009. So I have worked in Norwich. You know, I worked at Bacchus Hospital a little. We just want to see, you know, that hopefully you can have something in there that, you know, hire local residents or from the area that's possible. I own property in Preston too, and Griswold. You know, you go to Preston to pay your taxes, it's like this, you know, over the counter. You go to Griswold, the same thing. You know, you go to Norwich and behind bulletproof glass and stuff, and it just seems like, you know, that's the way the world's leading these days. But hopefully, like I said, the schools will be designed, you know, to keep the kids safe, and hopefully they took, you know, into account all that. I was trying to see how much it cost to build Norwich Tech. I couldn't really find that answer in 2009, but anyway, sometimes rehabbing, you know, is a poor choice, and building new seems like the way to go, you know, with the tax, with the reimbursements and stuff. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
How you guys doing? Malik Gibson, 14 Tyler Avenue in Norwich. So,
I'm sorry, could you speak a little louder, please?
Malik Gibson, 14 Tyler Avenue, Norwich. So, speaking from my own experience, I'm one of the products of Norwich Public Schools. I'm only 22 years old. I'm a college student right now. I would say I went to Greenville Elementary before it was closed down. I was the last class before they actually tore the school down. And then I ended up going to Aquanic. And so when I arrived at Aquanic, I was so far ahead of all the people in my grade that I used to do extra classwork assigned by my teachers. And so I can say there definitely is a disparity in the elementary schools. I also went to Teachers Memorial, and I actually ended up going to Teachers right around when Kelly Middle School was renovated. And I had friends that went here, and we used to talk all the time. And they'd tell me about smart boards, tell me about the new classrooms, tell me about how they're able to use new computers in their computer labs. There definitely is a disparity and has been a disparity. I now work with the Norwich Rec Department, and I also work in some of the Norwich Public Schools, and I've seen nothing has changed. Teachers actually still looks the same since my dad has gone there, and my dad is now 43. That's almost 30 years over now. This school has been renovated. There are plenty of schools in Norwich that have been needed the renovations. And sitting in this room, I'm pretty sure I'm the most current student that has been in any of the Norwich Public Schools. So for me being a person that now works in the community, you can see the disparity every day. I work with kids at my recreation department. I've worked with kids in the Norwich Public School system, and you see it all the time. A bunch of students from a school across town, or even a school such as Mohegan and Stanton, that literally are within maybe a 10-mile distance, if that, and the same grade can't do the same math problems. Like, there's a clear disparity there. And yes, maybe the tax dollars may be a little well overspent, but it should be spent if it means that every kid is getting the same equal education. Yes, maybe Norwich has produced some fine kids like me that go on to different cities and work and all that, but it does start with the fact that there aren't things in Norwich for kids, and the fact that the school system is so messed up that you have certain kids that are able to go on to high school and be right there with all the best in their class, and then so many other students that struggle. Like, NFA shouldn't have to make a Sachem campus for students who can't catch up to the kids that are at the actual campus. That should tell you right there that there's a big disparity coming from middle school to elementary school all the way to high school. So personally, I vote yes for this. You need to fix every school, especially teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And anyone else like to speak at this time on ordinance number 3? Yep, please.
Beryl Fishbone, 19 Bliss Place. Believe it or not, guys, I really am for building the new schools. Not just the elementary, but certainly teachers. And there are some things here at Kelly that could use a little updating as well. But you know I love numbers. Lots of numbers. And I have a concern. Building all the schools at the same time, they'll all age at the same time, and they're all going to need renovations at the same time. New roofs at the same time, new air systems, new windows, new floors, new whatever it is that you're going to need at one school, you're going to need in all of them. And nowhere in the plan, or at least the ones that I've been privy to read, have I read, or in the budgets, where money should be set aside every year for those renovations. And that needs to be a line item in the budgets where you're setting money aside because you know that a big bill is going to come. As a homeowner, I know that every 30 or 40 years I'm going to need to put a new roof on. I know that there's going to be a plumbing break. I know that there is going to be something. When I buy a car, I know that there's going to be new tires, oil changes, all kinds of stuff. When we build these new schools, it's not a one and done. It's one and moving forward. And somewhere in the plans, the city budget, the school budget, money needs to get set aside so that there is a forward plan in place, ready to keep us moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Ordinance number 3 at this time. I thought he did. Oh, yeah.
Russell Hyde, 200 McKinley Avenue Extension, Norwich, Connecticut. A lifelong resident of Norwich. Most of the schools that I attended are still up and functioning. I think the decision is right at this time to do this. What the woman just alluded to is another good idea. To renovate an old building, I'm a lifelong member of Carpenters Union. There's no judge no one can judge how much remediation, all of that stuff is going to cost. It could cost up to 3 to 4 times what you're looking to spend here. I think overall, if the state kicks in whatever they suggested, 185 or whatever it was, I think that's a good deal. In today's market, $100 million is nothing. Everything is on a up, it's getting out of control. So I think it's a good time to make a move on this. And education is important. It's the most important thing you can do for your children. And giving them an education with the best available product, people, and so forth. And they're not going to end up just getting a job. They're going to have a career. A career is much more important than just a job. You know, we have to focus on what we're doing wrong. We're number 33 in the world now in education. We should be ashamed of ourselves. I still think it's a great idea to move forward to this. The only question I would have would be, what is actually earmarked for demolition, and have someone with real construction knowledge and all of the remediation and all of the stuff that has to be improved today. When you make these remodels, they have to completely come up to standard. If they've done entire walkthroughs on some of the buildings that are scheduled to be sold, demoed, or whatever, I have not. I originally heard what they were going to take out of the picture, but I don't know how, and would some of that money for sale of that property be used in some manner or put into a box that cannot be used unless it comes to time for maintenance. I think you guys have done a great job. This gentleman over here did a great job on a lot of research. And this isn't just fun. This is work. People don't realize all of this is work. And I would hope that no matter how this turns out, if any renovations are done or any new construction, we use local help. It dismayed me something terrible, $800,000 for that rotary downtown. It was built by somebody in Massachusetts. We got 20 people in Norwich here that could have done that job. That was unacceptable, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And I'd also like to address the council at this time on this ordinance.
Good evening, Jason LaBelle, 113 Ross Hill Road in Lisbon. I'm not a Norwich resident, but I have a vested interest in Norwich. I had the distinct pleasure of playing football with Miss Hayes' nephew down the street over here at NFA. I've bounced plenty of lacrosse balls off the back of the gym over here, you know, and we have very little opportunity in Norwich for our youth, for our children, to have pathways to construction. And that's one of the biggest reasons I'd like to address the council tonight, to take a serious look when you put the bid documents out, that you look at 30% local hire, meaning 30% Norwich residency working on these projects. This is a big number, $385 million. Let's maximize the opportunity to get our children the opportunity. We're talking about equity, equality, and that's an opportunity for these folks to get the pathway to that career that Mr. Hyde was just talking about in the construction fields. You know, and you know, with the 20% county hire, that's a good number to look at. you know, and you can fill in the rest. So you talk about 50% local hires. And we all know that money spent in the community comes back to the community. The construction is very transient oriented. We see it all the time. Workforces follow the contractor, they follow the work. If this council doesn't put their foot down and demand that the contractors coming in use local residents in the construction process, it's not going to happen. Don't expect them to have a good faith agreement or anything like that. You need to take the responsibility to put that language out to make sure that that local hire opportunity is there. And while you're at it, take advantage of apprenticeship language too. Maintain a constant apprenticeship on that job. That's the only way that you're going to ensure a true, clear future for your residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone has not had an opportunity to address the council this evening would like to speak at this time? Who has not spoken at this time?
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is David Jarvis. I'm a local representative of the North Atlantic Regional State Council of Carpenters. We represent 30,000 strong in New England, 3,000 strong in Connecticut. Many of the members live here in Connecticut and have joined me in a couple rows back. So we are very interested in this project, both for the education value, the stimulants on the local economy, and offering an alternative career to those that may not choose college. A project of this size gives the opportunity for local residents to participate in a local apprenticeship program, which will get them to a livable wage that will allow them to buy a house, to stay here, to play here, to be a part of the community. As you've already heard from some of our great proud members, they've lived here, worked here, and have retired here and are being supported by their benefits that they worked hard for, with other towns like Norwich that have partnered with the carpenters, have partnered with the trades. When they decided to spend money, they looked at local residents hires, Windham County hires, or New London County hires down here, but many towns are starting to understand the value of putting local people to work with local opportunity. So there's nothing better than spending funds in town and continuing to drive your workforce and grow your workforce, because it's a value and an instant return to the local economy. So I would encourage you to use every means necessary to allow this kind of language to be in your bid documents, as you'll be supporting the education, supporting the local economy, and supporting the local trade men and women that work very hard each day, many of which live here and are traveling to other towns because there's not an opportunity for them here. So there's lots of opportunity all the way around, and we look forward to partnering with the City Council and the Building Committee to make sure that we can get this across the finish line and get as many local residents to work as possible, sustaining a lifelong career that allows them to stay in their house, allows them to retire with dignity and remain a part of this community. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Again, anyone who has not had a chance to speak tonight, speak on ordinance number 3. And anyone like to speak again on ordinance number 3 who has not had a chance? Okay, I mentioned because Mr. Koulos had mentioned he had additional comments. Is there anyone else? I saw another person who raised his hand who spoke previously, but Mr. Palazzo? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the council. You guys do a fantastic job. I don't think it's been mentioned enough. You always try to do what's best for us. And I think everybody here is trying to do what's best for their individual needs. We have a lot of carpenters. We have a lot of school board people. We have one musician, I think. He asked for the arts. He asked for, that's okay. So just to be clear, big word, priority, and Peter uses it quite a bit. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. I know you on a personal level, so I don't mean disrespect. Mr. Mayor, you use that a lot, and it really is key. All day long, we make decisions on priorities, whether we're going to reach for the coffee or watch the road or look at the speedometer. All day long, there's little priority things, and it just makes so much sense. And these schools do need work. We want the kids to be safe. I mean, you know, the arts and the music, that's a long-term thing. That's for the mentality of us here in Connecticut and locally. We can't change the world, but we got to start somewhere. But yes, we have to have a wiring system that's correct. And so, I mean, we have to have boilers that aren't going to blow up, and we have to close the school down. All these points are well taken, but priority is the key word. And it really, really is, and it just makes so much sense to have a board that understands that is key. And you got to look at the businesses moving out of this town. The taxes are high. I'm a business person. I'm also a musician. God, look at the empty buildings. We got to start trying to bring the taxes down. We just came out of a COVID squeeze that's terrible. Anybody got a lot of extra money? If you were lucky enough to be a union carpenter working, okay, you did, because they get paid well. But most of even the union carpenters, they were out of work too. Everybody hurts. We have to consider that. We're coming out of a bad time. Please consider the priorities. Let's give the kids what they need, the security. We're still in a nasty world out there. If we need guards on every door, let's do it. Let's get the heating system done. Let's have a list of these things and get it done for the kids. And we'll work on our long-term music things and arts later. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Koulos?
Okay, I'm here to speak to the inadequacies of the buildings to meet the educational community needs in 2022 and beyond, given that Norwich Public Schools are currently housed in buildings planned and built 50 years or more ago. The schools we're using were built before personal computers and tablets, before the Americans with Disabilities Act, before expected services for special education students, before the 500 English language learners came into our schools, before we served 3 meals a day from our cafeterias, and certainly before the effects of climate change and a worldwide COVID pandemic. There's inadequate room for the cadre of specialists that are now part of every school: special ed teachers, paraprofessionals, school psychologists, audiologists, speech and language specialists, math and reading tutors, and now school resource officers. The range of social and child welfare programs that are administered in the schools were not in existence 50 years ago. Some of these programs are required by state and federal mandates to secure continued funding for our schools. Our schools have become more than just classrooms where students learn the 3 R's, but are necessary resource centers that are key to the success of students and families in modern society. There are hundreds of meetings with teachers, parents, and administrators held every year to aid our special education students. We constantly scramble to find space to hold these required meetings. We're unable to provide the special services required by over 100 of our students, mainly due to lack of space for specialized classes. This necessitates that we spend funds on out-of-district tuition and transportation to meet these needs. Our current buildings have reached the limit as to what we can provide, and we spend millions that we could keep in district if we had the new dedicated space. Our buildings were built before Columbine and Newtown became shorthand for school safety. As events in Uvalde, Texas recently taught us, older schools are just one unlocked door away from tragedy. New construction would provide those security features required by changed societal norms. New schools would be built so that they're easily accessible to all students and visitors, no matter their mobility limitations. Our schools should be safe and secure while they hold our most precious resource, our children. Norwich residents are yearning for spaces that are open to community activities and can be multifunctional. Our schools can and should be used to meet the gap in community function spaces, whether it be for sports, the arts, and meeting rooms that enrich residents' lives. Our citizens should have input into design for new buildings that would incorporate these spaces and that are now not currently possible, nor possible under a renovation-only plan. The options before you are, number one, to renovate our existing school buildings, or number two, proceed with an ambitious program of building new schools and a complete upgrade of other buildings. There is not a do-nothing option. Money will have to be spent for Norwich to have school buildings to educate our children. The question is simple. Do we invest $385 million, which I know is a huge and scary number, in a planned program of replacing our schools with new buildings, then using state reimbursements to reduce the burden on taxpayers to about $150 million? Or, if we don't build new, then the existing buildings will have to be renovated at a cost to exceed $225 million with no reimbursements. This renovation plan would be throwing money into old buildings, but not addressing the changed educational and community needs, and only forestalls what must be a much more expensive replacement in the future. Taxpayers must know that money will be required. There's no getting around it. The ultimate question is just how much is needed and what do we get for our money. Kicking the can down the road has been done for decades. The time to act is now, tonight. I urge the City Council to enact the full school facilities building project as proposed in Ordinance 3. Our schools have much different needs than when our current buildings were constructed. The inadequacies of our buildings are putting strains on programs and educational objectives. We need to update these buildings to meet the needs of our students, families, and community in the 2020s and beyond. New and updated schools will put Norwich on a level playing field with other districts, attract qualified teachers and staff, and help to bring all of our students back into the district. Norwich needs to invest in new schools. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Again, anyone else like to speak on ordinance number 3 at this time? Anyone else like to speak on ordinance number 3 at this time? Anyone like to speak ordinance number 3 at this time? Is there anyone wanting to speak in opposition at this time? Anyone in opposition? Anyone in opposition? Seeing no one, I therefore declare this a public hearing to be closed. I thank you all for sharing your concerns. Do you want a 5-minute recess? At this time, I'm going to move that we take a 5-minute recess in case members need to stretch their legs or whatever. The council will come back to order. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Okay, second reading and action on the above ordinances previously presented. An ordinance appropriating $500,000 for the cost of planning a lead copper service line replacement program in the city of Norwich, authorizing the issuance of $500,000 revenue bonds of the city secured solely by water revenue to meet said appropriation, and authorizing the city and the Department of Public Utilities to enter into grant and loan agreements and a joint resolution with the state of Connecticut with respect hereto.
Thank you. At this time, I'd ask for a motion to bring this ordinance to the floor. Alderman Singh, second by Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Alderman Singh.
Thank
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I am in favor of this resolution, but for the benefit of citizens, I would like Chris to give a little overview on how this is an important project and related to the lead and copper questions that citizens have. Thank you.
Mr. LaRose, please.
So the Norwich water system has roughly 10,000 water services in our territory. Of those, there are 1,500 of questionable material, and the majority of those that are questionable will be lead. Copper services are acceptable. They're still standard practice today to make copper services. And on a water system, typically it's either a compression fitting that holds the copper together, or it was a flared fitting back in the day. Very little solder was put in the outside of the house. When you get inside the house, copper pipe is soldered together, pre-80s solder, heavy in lead. There's concern about that lead, but this is beyond the meter and beyond the scope of this project. Lead inside the house is not going to be covered at all by this. It's all outside of the house. The Department of Health is still putting together the requirements, but we are required to have a plan in place by 2024. This $500,000 will get us to 2024, and that plan will include a material inventory, a replacement program, bid documents to do the replacement, and a sampling plan. So that's all part of that $500,000. The majority will be individuals going in each of these 1,500 services and doing the test to make sure that that lead has been replaced or there is lead and know what the action needs to be on those services.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? President Pro Tem.
Thank you. So, Chris, the terminology lead copper is just talking about a pipe that is principally lead.
Correct.
But it's an alloy that was used for a period of time to...
The lead is concerned, and the copper is only concerned if there's soldered joints in the copper.
Thank you.
But to this day, we install copper services in our system. It's still acceptable.
Thank you. Is there further questions at this time on this ordinance? Seeing none. Roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto? Yes. Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
The ordinance passes on a 7-0 vote. It is adopted. Thank you.
Number 2, an ordinance appropriating $3,350,000 for the planning, design, and construction to replace a water main along Caribou Drive and Lola Lane in the city, authorizing the issuance of $3,350,000 revenue bonds of the city secured solely by water revenue to meet said appropriation, and authorizing the city and Department of Public Utilities to enter into grant and loan agreements and a joint resolution with the state of Connecticut with respect hereto.
At this time, I'd ask for a motion to bring this ordinance to the floor. Alderwoman Berto, second by Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto? Yes. Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
The ordinance is adopted on a 7-0 vote. Thank you.
Number 3, an ordinance appropriating $385 million for the City of Norwich School Construction Program, including property acquisition, design, engineering, environmental assessment, and remediation, construction, installation, repair, renovations, and addition of various school facilities, and authorizing the issuance of $385 million bonds of the city to meet said appropriation, and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowing for such purpose.
Thank you. At this time, I'd ask for a motion to bring this ordinance forward. Alderwoman Gould, second Alderman Singh. Is there discussion? President Pro Tem.
Thank you. To address one of the questions that came,
to address one of the questions that came up from the podium regarding where did the project cost estimates come from. Our architects, DRA, brought in a construction company that does this type of work as one of their principal lines of business. And they worked up the estimates that this ordinance was built from. So the numbers on the project are not guesses. They're hardly estimates. They're pretty solid and accurate numbers given the construction and fiscal environment that we are currently dealing with. Secondly, I would just like to say that one of the other comments that was made was about dealing or helping to build better relationships with our delegation in Hartford regarding the reimbursement, and that the community should know that those conversations have already begun. The mayor and I have discussed that at length. There's been conversations with Senator Austin and our local state representatives. This project and the needs of this community's school system are on the radar already in Hartford. And I think at this time, the only other thing that I would say to the community on this matter is something that Mr. Koulos hit pretty hard when he was at the podium. There is no do-nothing option. Essentially, we are at a point where it's time to pick our poison, for lack of a better term. Either we move this bond forward and move this project forward at the cost of $150 million estimated, worst case scenario, ultimately out of our pockets, or we spend $225 million, every dime of which will come out of our pockets without reimbursement, merely to maintain and fix, not update, but maintain and fix what we currently have, which we know is not working. And with that, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? Alderman Singh.
Thank you. So I think this is the opportunity for us to show education is a part of economic development. And of course, there are many viewpoints to see this project. For teachers and for administration, they probably look at a better workplace for them through this project. For our children, we can they look at a better facility and better education system, better equipped with technology. So everyone has different perspective to look at this project, but of course it's a hard take for all of us. It's a big project and everyone's concerns are legitimate. I don't undermine people's concerns. I'm also a taxpayer, so I don't want my mill rate to go up either. But it's very hard decision. Are we gonna pump $225 million over 20 years and still struggle with our old buildings? Or should we use the state reimbursements and put $149 million over 30 years? So I will say do the math. And my perspective to look at this project is very simple. Fiscal stability for City of Norwich. Right now, every budget, there's struggle. And more than 50% budget is Board of Education budget. But I served on Board of Ed as well. And it is very hard because we don't know what thing can break. We don't know if we need boiler replacement, if we need windows replacement, if we need a roof replacement. So every year they have their own struggle. And then it just leads to fiscal instability for the whole city. And until unless we address that, we cannot focus our energies on the real economic development of the city. If we are thinking that we need to be conservative on many places just because we don't know what next big ticket item is coming. So if we do this project, it will lead the city to fiscal stability. So this is one way I look at this project. And of course, we do have second on in the new business ordinance on the floor, but I think if we break this project, we will be still in the same position, even though we might have good intentions to complete this whole project, but you never know. Maybe today we have political will, maybe we won't have political will for the second phase, or maybe citizens won't have that will to do the second phase. So if that doesn't go, now you are dealing with disparities among the school system, and you are still struggling with the fiscal instability for the city and for the school budget. So I will just say, just like Alderman DeLucia said, do the math. Let's do the math. $225 million over 20 years or $149 million over 30 years. So this is what I have to say, but I will like to have our architects team come in and touch upon few things quickly, and then briefly what safety things we are adding to the school project. Do we have anything in the project where we are welcoming more local workforce, and how special ed student needs can be met with this new facility? Because if we can save on that, we can probably save big chunk in our operating cost for the school budget itself. Thank you.
With leave of the council, if, either one or both who are available here who could address those two concerns.
Good evening, Greg Smalley from DRA Architects. Your first point on security, the buildings built in Connecticut now require a review in consort with the Connecticut State Police, and they are designed to a criteria that was the outcome of a number of workshops and a lot of effort put in after Sandy Hook. So we use that as a base and move beyond that with communication systems and protocols, working very closely with the police department during the planning process. So starting back when we're planning, not at design, but as you're planning, you're starting to think about security in the conceptual form, not in the physical form, so that all the agencies who might be responding are involved. We look at things such as radio frequencies between the police department and the radio department and the fire department and EMS, so that everyone has the same radios, the ability to talk to one another. Very simple, but something that's often overlooked is also the ability for the radios to work further back in the school. So we're looking at all of the pieces that are not only the physical world, but also the operational world, and how the teachers and parents and kids are all integrated into safety planning and understanding those safety protocols. So it is a far different approach from what was done when your current buildings were built, even from what was done when this building was built. It's quite a bit of change that has happened since then. Your second question with special education, the buildings that you have now were not designed to handle the amount of inclusionary programs that are currently within education and show no signs of going away. And with those programs also come an increase in staff. So in our programming for the master plan, we included those programs in each one of the schools and space for each one of those programs. That doesn't mean that you would duplicate those programs, but it means that across all of your elementary schools, you would be able to address all of your special education needs in district, except for the most needful student perhaps might still be outplaced. But typically in a program that addresses all the buildings at once, we see a return of a number of outplaced students back into the district. And with the working with Learn and the surrounding districts, you may end up being able to develop program space that would allow other students to come to your district.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion or statements from members of council at this time? Alderman Gould, please.
I don't know. I don't think so. $385 million is a lot of money. Well, no, it's a tremendous amount of money. And as the vice chairman of the school building committee, I fully endorse and wholeheartedly support the building of new elementary schools and the remodeling of Teachers Middle School and the renovations of Huntington as a new space for central office and adult education. This is taxpayer money, and we need to leverage the highest reimbursement rate from the state for this project. If the pandemic taught us anything, it is that the children need to be in the classroom with their teacher. Trying to teach over the computer just doesn't work for a great majority of our students. We cannot take the do-nothing approach. We all have fond memories of attending elementary school here in Norwich. I went to Stanton School, and not much of Stanton School has changed since I left there. Oh, maybe we've made some repairs, we've made some remodeling, we've done some additions. But none of our beloved buildings meet the needs of 21st century learning. The do-nothing approach is expected to cost over $200 million over the next 18 years if Josh's calculations are all correct, and with no financial help from the state of Connecticut. And our schools still will not meet the needs of our students. As a city, we must leverage the state of Connecticut school construction grants to the fullest in order to realize the least amount of tax increase to our taxpayers. All of our children across the city deserve an equal education in buildings of equal quality. I expect that building new schools will ultimately reduce the Board of Education's budget with savings in areas such as utilities, transportation, tuition. New buildings and equal opportunities for learning will encourage families to move to Norwich, leading to grand list growth. New buildings and equal opportunities for learning will encourage families to stay in Norwich, which will help stabilize our grand lists. New buildings allow children whose siblings were split up for whatever reason or the other, will allow them to go to school together. But ultimately, whether or not we support this ordinance tonight, the ultimate decider will be the taxpayer. If the taxpayers of the city of Norwich want new buildings, or they're okay with the buildings that we have, and they're okay with spending over $200 million with no help from the state of Connecticut. So I will support this ordinance and let the taxpayers of the city of Norwich decide what is best for our children for 21st century learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderwoman Berto.
If we do nothing, the inequity between the schools will continue to exist for a much longer period of time. Kelly Middle School was just renovated 10 years ago. So the kids have access to better technology, up-to-date classrooms, where people have stated Teachers Memorial is old, deteriorating. It's got old technology, old equipment, needs extensive work. It's like putting money into that old car, expecting it to continue to still work when you really know you need a new car. All children are entitled to a fair, good, and equal education. And building 4 new schools with the help of our local workforce will bring that to our kids. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. The word I'm going to use is bold. Back in January or February when we brought the ordinance, putting a timeline together to have a report, a plan to the council so that we could be at this point of making a decision on the direction for our schools from an infrastructure pathway, this is what we were looking at. We spent 2 years ago having conversations. The budget ad hoc committee of the council and the Board of Ed has done their part of charting a course on what we have now as far as their budget and making sure we can be stable and maintain with the resources we have. And one of the things that the superintendent has uncovered during many of our budget expenditure meetings is the difficulties with not being able to have a full-blown capital improvement plan. Because that plan, as we've seen, can change at a drop of a dime. A boiler goes down, a roof needs to be repaired, and more money is spent at one time than we expect. One of the things that I look at it is, as several of my colleagues have already put, it's our job as a city council, as we have already started, to work with our delegation in Hartford to maximize the reimbursement. There's no question about that. It's going to take the effort of us continuing to collaboratively work together to get that part across the finish line as well. So even after November, our work is not done. Our work will continue to be to make sure that we make sure the burden on taxpayers can be reduced to the maximum amount within our power. So we've got work still to do on that front. The other thing is I look at this project as an economic driver. We talk workforce investment. We talk about a lot of the dollars we have spent are put towards ARPA projects for businesses and housing stock and things of that sort in this area. This is an opportunity for us to maximize attracting the full family to come to Norwich. For that young family, the middle-aged family, to come to Norwich and be a part of Norwich, knowing that their child is going to be in a system that has the adequate resources in the classroom, the adequate resources out in the playing fields to be successful no matter what their choice in education is. And so, just as much as we spend dollars to help business growth, this is an area to help that. Education is a cornerstone to economic development. It is also an opportunity for ours, as some have stated, for apprenticeships, for our own individuals living in this community to make a livable wage while helping to rebuild and have pride in building something that can last here in this community. It gives our students that are going off to tech the idea that there is opportunity for you to give back and build back your own community. So this project can serve as a means of recovery to this community. Yes, it's a large price tag, but if we do the right things, those dollars can be reinvested back into our community for those that buy homes, those that invest in the businesses, those that use local vendors and contractors to do the work. We can do that part. But the only way that is done is us continuing to take bold steps. We took a bold step when we put out the pension plan last year for a vote, the radio project for our police department. We as a council took a bold approach when we updated the CAD system and dispatch equipment for our first responders. So being bold and giving our city a chance to continue to revive and thrive and build on itself in the future is not cheap. And we've known this can has been down, kicked for a while, and this is our opportunity to chart the course from an infrastructure standpoint as we continue to work with our school board on the fiscal part of their operating. So I'm excited to do the part of educating our community on the need. Because to make no mistake, 225 is just the minimum. That's not including technology and any other things that may come up that are more worse than we expect them to be at this point. So 225, with us having to bear the entire cost, is just the minimum. It could be much more than that. So we have to do our part in being bold, and I think this is the first big bold step in putting our students, our families, and the community in the right direction, because it has more than just an educational value. There's recreational value, there's community value in this project all around, and I would be excited to do the part to educate our community on what the things this project can bring forward and do for this community. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion at this time? President Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's fair to say, and I'll just take a small leap if my colleagues on the council will allow me, to say that none of us are happy about the tax impacts of a project of this magnitude. But we've arrived at this point through at least 30 years of deferred maintenance, inaction, half measures, and short-term thinking. And our children are paying the cost. So just for a moment, let's put the students and the children who are not even students yet, and the families who do not even have children yet, but who choose to live here, let's put them first for a moment. Think about the fact that students who are currently outplaced will show a significant reduction in a number of them that will have to be sent out of district to get the services that they need, because students are best served in their home district. Alderman Wilson talked about us being bold. We have been bold. We have done some very bold economic development projects, particularly with our ARPA allocations. And I am hopeful that many, if not all of those, are going to bear significant fruit into the beyond the foreseeable future. So why shouldn't we be bold about the investment in our children? And Alderman Olson also just alluded to it a moment ago. The project, this master plan, also improves the recreation facilities throughout the city, further addressing the needs of our youth. So it was said, but not by me, but in my first term, it was said by one of our colleagues that a city demonstrates its priorities by how it spends its money. Well, I think that tonight we should be taking a bold step to show what our priority is for the children in the city of Norwich. I yield the floor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderwoman Gould.
We've spoken tonight a lot about the taxpayers, and we've spoken a lot about the children. But we have a component that's missing. The teachers, the paraprofessionals, the audiologists, the speech pathologists, the math tutors, the nurses, all of those people who make up our Board of Education. And I'm not saying that they're not invigorated to go to work every day, but maybe some days, maybe a little less, because they know that it's a rainy afternoon and the ceiling in their classroom leaks, or it's really cold outside and they know that the heat is inadequate in their building. We will also invigorate, re-energize, re-motivate all of those people who make sure that our students not only get educated, but get served their breakfast, their lunch, their dinner. We're going to make sure that their tutors are there and are excited to work in these new buildings. That Matt Brown won't be, or Kristen Stringfellow won't be getting a phone call every afternoon about some other little problem that if we don't hurry up and get the bucket under the leak or the space heater in the room, we're going to have a bigger problem. And we've all talked about it. This is not a new problem. We didn't wake up yesterday and go, oh my God, Stanton School was built before 1960. Or that Huntington was built 100 years ago. We didn't wake up yesterday and realize that. But we had to take the initiative, we had to take the bull by the horns, because we heard from the Board of Education that we've got problems, and we listened, and we said, tell us more, tell us more, tell us more, show us. And we went and looked. We also get some new recreational opportunities, and I've been a big proponent of it from day one, that these are community centers right in our community. We don't have to have a special community center that's over here. We have 4 schools that we could have as community centers for civic groups, social groups, arts, music, whatever it might be. We will now have the space in the school that wasn't formerly used as the custodian's closet. We'll have that adequate space now. Adequate heating, adequate lighting, adequate ventilation, and it makes sense. And I'm sorry that, nobody realized this 20 or 30 years ago, but we're here now, we've seen the light, and I think, we have to move this plan forward. And thank you for indulging me about my Stanton school days. Because we all have stories. If you're a Norwich native or born and raised here, you all have stories about your elementary school. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman Singh.
Thank you. So I just want to quickly thank our school committee for doing all this hard work and spending so many hours on this. Also, I want to thank Josh for making that mill rate impact, but we are missing something in that, which is positive impacts of all the work we are doing and investing money in the businesses and different industries we are open to, like cannabis. So there will be a lot of positive impact to the city, which will be coming. And for first 3 years, if there is no impact of the school project, I think we all need to focus our energies towards the economic development and help our economic development agency and everyone to make proper decisions. So in next 3 years, if we do everything right, maybe we won't have that mill rate impact. But only time will tell, and our decisions will tell that. But if we move forward with good intentions and keep doing the math we are doing so far, we'll be in a good state. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? At this time, I'd like to refer to our Comptroller to briefly speak about the issuance of bonds, how it takes place. I don't want everyone leaving here tonight thinking if this is passed on and goes on to referendum, is adopted by the voters, that every school is going to be done simultaneously, because that is not the case. If you could address that issue as the issuance of bonds takes place. I believe it's based on the plan and expenditures that would move forward.
Yes. So this ordinance gives the spending authorization for $385 million, working with cash flow estimates from DRA and estimated grant reimbursements. The tax impact that I prepared was built on the assumption that the bonds would be issued over 4 to 5 years between this fiscal year and fiscal year 2027, and the impact of those bonds would be layered in over that time. It assumes a 30-year repayment of bonds. Most of our capital bonds have been issued over 20 years, but the statutes allow a longer amortization period for schools, and I believe that's appropriate here when you're talking about such a long-lived asset. I think our newest schools are pushing 50 years old, so you can see that amortizing over 30 years is certainly reasonable. So that's how the bonds would be issued. You look at our cash flows we would look at them every year during construction and forecast what we need over the next 12 to 18 months, and then work with bond counsel and our financial advisors on the best methods to sell those bonds to get the lowest interest rates possible.
Thank you. Could you also speak briefly to the fact that as we retire old debt, that could have a positive impact on the new debt that's being assumed with these projects?
Yeah, my analysis looked at this project and the debt service on this project as one unit apart from anything else that's happening within the city. But the city is amortizing its debt over 20 years or less, or in the case of pension obligation bonds, 25 years. So every year we pay off that debt, the interest amount decreases each year, and our debt service requirements shrink each year. New projects come along, will be, I'm sure that there will be roads and public safety equipment, any number of other things that happen between now and when the school construction happens and after the school construction is finished, and we're still paying the bonds, but that's how debt service works.
Thank you. Back on the 11th, one of our architects mentioned another alternative path. That's why you see a different ordinance listed at the end of this agenda. And that was simply an acknowledgement of the difficult times we all face. But I think it's pretty clear the will of the council is to keep a unified approach at this time. And it will be our obligation after the vote today to ensure that we tell the narrative correctly and encourage our voters to support this issue. Just a quick reminder, we cannot, as a council or an elected member, use any city resources or facilities to do that education. We're not allowed to do that. So the advocacy must be based on the education of what this represents. It's an investment in the kids. It's also investing new money into new schools, which will last us hopefully for the next 50 years. The alternative is investing and keeping 7 elementary schools still open. And one of the goals not spoken a lot about tonight is to have 4 elementary schools at the end of this construction cycle instead of 7. So there will be additional savings. You won't have to staff the 4 schools. Yes, a number of teachers will move over to the larger facilities, but there will be other cost savings found in other ways. And it will be the obligation of anyone who's serving in office, Board of Ed or Council, to look and continue to push for those cost savings, keeping in mind that the taxpayers, we owe them that. That is all I have. I don't think there's any further discussion. Roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Let me do that again, please. Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
The ordinance is adopted on a 7-0 vote. Thank you.
Petitions and communication. Number 1, report from the Commission on the City Plan of the City of Norwich pursuant to Section 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statutes, Chapter 15, Section 4 of the Norwich City Charter, an ordinance appropriating $500,000 for the cost and planning of lead copper service line replacement program in the City of Norwich to meet said Norwich, authorizing the issuance of $500 revenue bonds of the city secured solely by water revenue to meet said appropriation, and authorizing the city and Department of Utilities to enter into grant and loan agreements and a joint resolution with the state of Connecticut.
Entertain a motion, please, that this be received. Alderman Singh, second by Alderwoman Gould. No discussion. Roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion to receive passes 7-0.
Number 2, a report from the Commission on City Plan of the City of Norwich pursuant to Section 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statutes and Chapter 15, Section 4 of the Norwich City Charter, an ordinance appropriating $3,350,000 for the planning, design, construction to replace the water main along Caribou Drive and Laurel Lane in the city, authorizing the issuance of $3,350,000 revenue bonds of the city secured solely by water revenue to meet said appropriation, and authorizing the city and the Department of Public Utilities to enter into grant and loan agreements and a joint resolution with the state of Connecticut with respect hereto.
Thank you. At this time, I'd ask for a motion to receive. Alderwoman Berto, second Alderman Singh. Seeing no discussion, roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. It is received.
Number 3, a report from the Commission on City Plan of the City of Norwich pursuant to Section 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statutes, Chapter 15, Section 4 of the Norwich City Charter, an ordinance appropriating $385 million for the City of Norwich school construction program, including property acquisition, design, engineering, environmental assessment, remediation, construction, installation, repairs, renovation, and addition of various school facilities, and authorizing the issuance of $385 million bonds of the city to meet said appropriation, and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowing for such purpose.
Thank you. Motion, please, that this be received. Alderman Wilson, second by Alderwoman Gould. Seeing no discussion, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
The motion passes 7-0. The memo is received.
Number 4, memo from the Comptroller on estimate impact of debt serviced on proposed school construction bond ordinance.
Motion, please. Alderwoman Singh, Alderwoman Berto. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. It is received.
Number 5, letter of resignation from Samantha Venturo from the Mohegan Park Improvement Development Advisory Committee.
Motion, please, to bring this. Alderwoman Gould, second Alderman Singh. Seeing no discussion, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. It is received. Thank you. At this time, there will be no report from the city manager. He is not able to be with us this evening. Thank you.
Citizen comment on resolutions.
I declare citizen comment on resolutions to be open. There are 3 on the agenda. One is an appointment to Stark District Commission, member of Board of Assessment Appeals, as well as the resolution that was added under suspension concerning a civic event taking place this Saturday, Rose City Water Wars. Anyone like to address the council on any one of those three resolutions at this time? Anyone like to address the council on the three resolutions at this time? Anyone like to address the council on the three resolutions at this time? Seeing no one, I declare citizen comment closed. Thank you.
New business resolutions. Relative to a reappointment of a regular member to the Historic District Commission.
A motion, please, bring it forward. Alderman Singh, second. Alderman Wilson. Is there discussion? Alderman Wilson.
Just want to thank Nancy O'Neill for her dedication and service to the Historic District Commission and being willing to continue that service to that commission.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, a roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Bertle?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
The motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Number 2, relative to a reappointment of a regular member to the Board of Assessment Appeals.
A motion, please, to bring this to the floor. Alderman Berto, second. Alderman Wilson. Is there discussion? Alderman Wilson.
Again, I want to thank Democles Angelopoulos for his service on the Board of Assessment Appeals and his willingness to continue to serve as a regular member.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? I have a question then of Alderman Wilson.
Yes.
This gentleman is up for reappointment, but was appointed 2 years ago. At the time, and we just adopted a new policy, or renewed our policy, I should say, for appointment, reappointment. At that time, 2 years ago, this person did not apply then, and yet was appointed by that council. Was that discussed during the most recent interview that he participated in at all?
So none of those things came up. I will say the approach of, I don't know, of course, all of the things that, of course, occurred during the last appoint-reappoint committee. We had an interview moving forward and interviewing from the information we had in his application, as well as questions of the committee members. And, of course, I take it as an approach of moving forward. I can't think of things that I don't know from before. So those were things that, of course, were not discussed because that's something that was not brought up.
Thank you. I would only raise the issue because the members of this committee, they have a very important task, and that is to make sure the taxpayers, when they file an appeal, are really heard. It's really important that there's a fairness to the process. In the past, this particular individual had previously served on this Board of Assessment Appeals and was not reappointed, going back a number of years. There's concern about how the taxpayers are treated during the appeals, during the hearings, and it's of the utmost importance that people who serve on this committee do so with respect to them. And I think that has to be maintained, or the new process that we reaffirmed outlining how everyone ends up on a board or commission really is not being followed. Taxpayers need to know that when they file an appeal, they're going to get a fair shake. Their consideration, their statements made. If this board only rubber stamps what the tax assessor provides, then there really is no fair assessment and appeal.
Can I answer that, please?
Well, that wasn't a question.
Can I? I'll just respond to something.
Not finished, though.
Okay.
Thank you. I've been there 9 years now. This is my 5th year consecutively sitting here. I sat on the council at that time when someone else was appointed, a new set of eyes on the Board of Assessment Appeals. Since then, we've gone back to another individual who had served previously. I want to make sure the taxpayers are, in their appeals are fairly heard, I should say. It may be extraordinary and not happen often, but I will not be supporting this nominee based on those concerns. Now, if you'd like the floor, please.
Just two small things I want to, kind of reiterate. We interviewed this individual. We went through with interviews as the desire of the council. We, during that meeting, also discussed a procedure moving forward on every appointment moving forward. One of the other things that was we were able to discuss amongst the interview were some changes that we could see as positive things happening during the appointment process. And so I think those recommendations and kind of making sure that some of those things that were brought up possibly are instituted in the assessment appeals process do happen over the next year are important for us as a council and as a subcommittee to hold those individuals to the standard of doing that work. But I will say we don't take any appointment or reappointment or interview lightly. I respect the individual's time. I respect individuals stepping forward to want to be a part of the community and building it. So I just want to give those 2 points on that's a lot of the discussion we had also during that meeting.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on this resolution? President Pro Tem, please.
I have two thoughts on this. The first is just from what I heard you say, Mr. Mayor, because you raised two concerns and you framed them in the same way. What I mean by that is you said that there was, that you have a perception, and that might be real to you, but not based in reality. You have a perception that this particular individual lacks tactfulness in the way that he communicates with people who come forward for an assessment appeal. And I would submit that you are not in the room, and I am not in the room, and none of the committee members that are making this recommendation are in the room when those conversations happen. But I would think it was fair to say that anyone who is in a position of telling somebody who's appealing their tax bill no is going to be perceived in a negative light. Nobody wants to hear the word no, and they particularly don't like the person that has to tell them no. So that's first. Then you framed it as an issue of fairness, and I am not aware of any claim of unfairness in the way that the appeals are heard and the decisions are made. So I think that it is inappropriate to frame my prior comment in the manner that you did in my latter comment. And you can't equate someone feeling bruised, so to speak, because they were told no, with being treated unfairly. And albeit unintentional, I believe that's just what you did. The second thing is that your question should not be for the current chair of the committee, Alderman Wilson. Your question should be about the prior appointment of this particular person and their interview and the status of their application should be directed to the only person on this council sitting right now that was on that committee during the last term. So I think it's, to use your word, unfair to paint Alderman Wilson into a corner about a decision that was made by a committee that he had no part of. Not only was he not the chair, he wasn't even appointed to that committee by the previous council. So I would say please direct your question to Alderwoman Gould. Or let's drop this and move on, because we all know that this particular appointment is the reason why we had to go through the entire iteration of realigning what the process that the appoint-reappoint committee is going to follow. We've done that. They have now followed it with these two appointments, starting with these two appointments, and we're moving forward. I just don't see, I don't see what is to be gained by, dicing this up any further. I yield the floor.
Briefly respond. One, this appointment 2 years ago never went through the committee. There was no application from this person seeking to be reappointed. There was only one applicant. That person was interviewed, was not selected. And to be blunt, it was the 4 Democrats back then who put that person up without the benefit of an interview, without the benefit of an application, and it came to the council at the last minute that night, unbeknownst to myself. And I can attest to you that as a mayor, you get all kinds of phone calls, regardless of what board of commission is engaged. And you do hear concerns raised by taxpayers, and there were many concerns raised in case of this particular person over the years. And it was the decision previously to reappoint new people, a new set of eyes to this Board of Appeals. Had it gone through the committee process, I wouldn't have had a complaint. The person never even applied, and a resolution showed up that night, sponsored by 4 people on the council. A couple of them are still here, and it was acted on. To me, that's why we reaffirmed the policy that everyone must have an interview. This gentleman refused to do an interview the year he wasn't reappointed, said it wasn't necessary, and yet that was the policy of the council at that time. And he wasn't the only one. There are other people who simply left their service to the city on boards and commissions because they didn't want to do an interview. Those are just the facts. So, and again, we all bring our own positions and our concerns. I just have strong concerns about this particular nominee and past actions. And so I've stated my case. But again, it never went to the commission on appoint and reappoint 2 years ago. It was sidestepped by the majority of the council then. So your statement's inaccurate completely. It was never presented to the committee because the person never applied to be appointed. The one person that did, who was interviewed, was not appointed, and he had ended up there because during revaluation, the city can go from 3 to 5 people, so we could have appointed 2 new persons to handle the extra workload. Only one person showed up, and I happen to know he worked very hard during that time. He was the only one then applied 2 years ago, but again, someone else was reappointed after having left the commission, but did not apply. That was my concern, and I think it needs to be on the record. Anyone seeking to serve a board of commission in this city will be interviewed. And if you're not willing to do that, then you should not end up on a council floor at the last minute and be appointed to any board or commission. And that's my end of my statement. Roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
No.
Alderman Neuendorf?
No.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
No.
It's 4-3.
The resolution is adopted on a 4-3 vote. Thank you.
Number 3, relative to Rose City water wars to be held at Jenkins Park.
Motion, please, to bring this to the floor. Alderwoman Gould, second, Alderwoman Berto. Is there discussion? Alderman Wilson.
So I attended last year's Water Wars, and one of the conversations we've had over the last few weeks as a community is a larger sense of community engagement from city departments, organizations working together to have a positive impact on our youth in this community, to show them a good time, but more importantly, to show that we care about their safety, their well-being, and them having opportunities in this community. And I want to give kudos to those that have done a lot of the planning for this. It's a fun day. I encourage everyone to come out, have some fun, volunteer, get involved. This is a step in the right direction. These are things that are positive for our community. These are things that give our youth the notion that we care about them, that as a city we can use resources in a positive light, and that everybody can gain something from this day. So I'm excited about it and fully support it. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? I would just add that I had the pleasure of meeting with Carolyn Turner and LaShawn Cunningham and other members of our community who are part of this organization and its effort to help have great community events. And that's why this resolution is here tonight, so that you know that the city is with them. And I can tell you that appropriate insurances are in place as well. Roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Thank you. At this time, it would be my intent to withdraw the new ordinance.
Second motion to withdraw.
I think there's a third sponsor, Alderman DeLucia.
Yeah,
Oh.
I concur.
we all agree. Motion to adjourn. Right, it's withdrawn. Doesn't need a vote.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Alderwoman Gould, second Alderman Singh. Roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Oh, yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes to adjourn 7-0. Good night, thank you all.